Hi, everybody. We'll just give a minute just to let everybody get in from the waiting room. So welcome. We're just giving everybody a couple of minutes to enter the webinar, and then we'll get started. Okay, well, maybe it's 8:01, so here in New Zealand. So let's get started. Greetings, everybody. You're very welcome to this webinar, which is being organised by the New Zealand Climate Smart Agriculture Initiative in partnership with the African Climate Action Partnership. This activity is in support of the Global Research Alliance on agricultural greenhouse gas emissions, and we're really excited to see so many of you on the webinar today. Just to introduce myself, my name is Sinead Leahy. I'm the New Zealand co-chair of the Livestock Research Group for the GRA, and I'm really delighted to be helping moderate this session today. We've got just some housekeeping. We've got 4 fantastic speakers coming up. I'll allow each of the speakers to give their presentation, and then we'll have plenty of time for some questions and answers. So if you'd like to answer a question, please do so during while the presenters are presenting. We've got a Q&A button. If you look down at the bottom of your screens, you should see a Q&A. Please ask your questions through the Q&A function. And if you really like a question, then please upload it with a thumbs up. That lets me know that that question's important to the audience. Okay, so let's get into it. So just this webinar, of course, is all about inventories. And to sort of set the scene, of course, you know, livestock inventories are such a critical tool for the sustainable development of the livestock sector. And you know, will become increasingly more important as the transition to low emissions farming accelerates. So this initiative that's been going on for the last 5 years, I think I'm really excited to sort of learn some of the lessons that they've learned over their journey, some of the opportunities that they see for next steps. And so without further ado, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Andy, to kick us off and talk us through his journey. Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Sinead. So I will give a brief overview of the Climate Smart Agriculture Initiative's activities in Africa in the last few years, based on my former role as the technical coordinator of this program. Before I do that, just one general introduction. We're going to be talking a lot about improving greenhouse gas inventories by moving from Tier 1 to Tier 2. Most of you probably are very familiar with what that is. A few of you may not be. So just a brief recap. The inventories of greenhouse gas emissions from livestock, the most simple method called the Tier 1 method, any country can apply. It just means multiplying the number of animals, for example, cattle, the number of cattle in a country by an emission factor from the IPCC guidelines. The Tier 2 approach is much more accurate because it breaks down cattle into different types of cattle in dairy cattle, other cattle in different production systems, younger, older, and then has country-specific estimates of the intake per animal. So with Tier 1, which most countries are still using, reducing the animal population is the only way for total emissions to reduce, which is not very useful for most policy purposes. Tier 2 is not only more accurate, but also more useful for looking at the effects of different management practices or policies, because not only animal numbers, but also the intake per animal can change. So it's more useful for NDC, developing sector planning, and also for tracking the effects of interventions. So that's a brief overview of what is this tier one, tier two that we're going to be talking about. Can you go on to the next slide, please, Deb? Thanks. So with the goal of improving inventories in mind, the CSA Initiative in Africa, which went on from 2021 to 2025, is about a US $3 million project funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade and the Ministry of Primary Industries of New Zealand. In the short term, a lot of the focus was on improving inventories, so improving tier one inventories and also then going from tier one to tier two, but then also using tier two to identify practices, climate smart practices that reduce greenhouse gas. The hope in the medium and longer term is then that countries in Africa more countries in Africa can report their inventories at a higher level, but also that this knowledge and capacity can leverage investment in climate smart and low emission livestock development. So moving on to the next slide, what did we do? I put it in three buckets. So one is country targeted support. So in Kenya, Malawi, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, we worked with the relevant ministries, other stakeholders, and partners. Some of you in this webinar were involved in that. I see Dr. Ramapani, Titis, Mr. Chamisa. Many thanks for your contributions. So we worked with the partners to improve the inventories, in all cases working on cattle. In Kenya, because they'd already had some basis on cattle, they also went to other ruminants like sheep and goats. And in some countries like Kenya and Zimbabwe, we also used the improved tier two inventories to explore scenarios and mitigation options to inform the last round of NDC updating. In Southern Africa, so with Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, and Mozambique, we worked collectively with all of those countries plus South Africa to combine the data that we had in order to develop tier two inventories for cattle. So that was not country specific, it was more a regional approach. And then we also supported the livestock community of practice to promote regional exchange. A lot of the technical reports from work in all the countries is available on that website, which is at the bottom there, so you can look in more detail if you're interested. So what did we achieve? In terms of activities, more than 400 person days of training and exchange, and work that left every country with at least 2 tools or manuals for inventory management. So 21 of those tools and manuals in total. And 10 countries, sorry, I forgot to mention Ghana. Ghana was later added through MPI support. And Sega, will be presenting later, was working closely with CSIR in Ghana on their improvements. So that makes a total of 10 countries with either improved tier one inventories or tier two inventories. Most countries have those tier two inventories as an initial draft. 2 countries have already reported, so that's Malawi and Uganda, have already reported their improved tier one inventories, and 3 countries have already reported their tier two, so that's Kenya, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe, which have incorporated tier two into their latest biennial transparency reports. We have 4 countries that have stated their intention to include it in their next biennial transparency report. So that's Botswana, Lesotho, Zambia, and Uganda. And two countries have already used those tier two inventories to inform their last round of NDC update in Kenya and Zimbabwe. So in terms of short-term outcomes, some clear progress there. In terms of leveraged investment, well, we worked closely during the program with ongoing CBIT, FAO, and German government IKI funded projects in several countries. CCAC developed a new investment in Zimbabwe that built on the basis of the tier two work there, and further investments by the World Bank have referenced the work that we've done. So going on to my final slide. I guess you expect most people representing a donor-funded program to say, well, we've completed and these improvements have been made. Job done. Definitely not job done. It's really just a start. Even in countries that are already reporting at tier two, there's a lot more work to be done to consolidate the capacities and continually improve on the basis of the work done to date. So it's not job done, but I guess our outcome number one really is that it's about people. You know, we have in each country a group of people who are now able to engage in a more informed way on livestock greenhouse gas inventories, low emission development policy, investment, and practice. So it's really a start, and I think we're very proud of the basis that we've set in each of our partner countries. Inventory improvement, low emission, promoting low emission livestock development. It's a continuous improvement process. You know, it relates to the capacities of individuals, teams, and organizations, and the coordination between organizations, in particular, those responsible for greenhouse gas management in a country, which is normally a Ministry of Environment, and those in the livestock sector. Whilst we've developed some tools for inventory management, for data collection, and so on, you know, that's another aspect that should, we hope, evolve over time. So as I say, we've really set a basis rather than sitting here claiming job done. I think another lesson is that you know, climate change, the mandate is often with environment or other ministries, but in order to promote climate smart livestock, involving agriculture and livestock ministry is the key. They have often the mandate for promoting low emission livestock development. They have the technical knowledge and they have the links with the sector stakeholders and other related initiatives. So a lesson for us involving them in an appropriate way was really key to getting traction and good outcomes in each country. And finally, as I say, there's much more to be done. So continued donor commitment and work with the regional partners are needed to sustain the progress. And I'm very happy to see that AfCAP's livestock community of practice is continuing to engage with stakeholders in the region. So that's a brief overview from my side. And back to Sinead to introduce the subsequent speakers.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And just a reminder for people, we'll hear from all the four speakers, and then we'll have an opportunity at the end to ask some questions and answers. And if you've got a question and answer or a question that you want to put to the panelists or to our panel today, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So Andy, when you put that all on one screen, it looks on one slide, it looks very, very impressive. I can imagine how much work has gone in. So congratulations to you and the team that have been pulling that together. Yes, so please welcome Walter, who's going to tell us a little bit about the journey that Zimbabwe went on during this activity. Over to you, Walter.
Okay. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Walter from the University of Zimbabwe. So I'm just going to give you a snapshot of what we went through here in Zimbabwe through the New Zealand Climate Smart Agriculture Initiative. First of all, we need to know why it was a top priority for us to migrate to Tier 2 in the livestock sector. So the first thing is that just like in many, developing countries, livestock is the major source of greenhouse gas emissions. In our case, 51% of agricultural emissions, they're actually coming from livestock. Even if you include the land use sector, you can actually see that a quarter of our national emissions, they are coming from livestock. Next slide. And if we zoom into the livestock sector itself, about 90% of our emissions are coming from other cattle, which are mostly agro-pastoral systems. And of course, our goat sector is about 8% of national emissions. And through this initiative, when we quantify the Tier 2 emissions in the cattle sector, which is on your right, we actually see that the agro-pastoral system contributes, 80% of our national emissions, followed by our commercial beef sector. So after we did our first round, because we did 2 rounds of the project, in our first round, when we quantified our emissions from the agro-pastoral system, it also became a top priority that we had to move beyond, literature and at least gather more field data for the agro-pastoral system. Next slide. So just to give you an overview of the institutional setup, coming from my right-hand side, going up, or I can start from the top. So the Climate Change Management Department is the one that is responsible for climate change reporting in our country. And we have agriculture and forestry working group that works on the greenhouse gas inventories. And it is below this agriculture and forestry working group where we have the institution responsible for coordinating the Tier 2 inventory, which is the Ministry of Agriculture through the Department of Livestock Research. And within this Department of Livestock Research, we built a team of experts who will be responsible for the compilation, and it also includes, some international experts who provided, guidance, which is unique mainly. But we had also a bigger group of about 15 institutions, which serve the role of advisory in terms of consultations, reviewing the work that we've done, and of course, playing a role in providing the key data that we required. So this institutional setup is still in existence, despite that it started as a project-based, initiative, but now we are working in inventory reporting using this structure. Next slide. So there were quite a lot of partnerships that we forged during this process. Within the New Zealand project itself, we trained the core team at least how to make continuous improvements. So we trained them in terms of standard operating procedures, as well as training of trainers for the field surveys to collect the data. And out there in the field, we trained about 45 extension workers in 5 districts in terms of how to collect the data. And we leveraged, some funding from the CBIT project, because at the time when we did this project, we also had got a CBIT project ongoing that aimed to develop endemic methane emission factors. And we also had FAO coming on board. They also did another, thorough Tier 2 inventory training, and this actually helped quite a lot to enhance capacity of our national experts. Next slide. So just a snapshot of the 2 broad, data categories that you need, which is your population data and your animal performance data. So the low-hanging fruit is that on my right, extreme right column there, we have data being collected by national statistical agencies for different farm types. And so it was a a bit easier for us really, because for those farm types, the data is collected across 5 cattle subcategories. And at the bottom there, I've got a circled, a group of animals under the indigenous breeds. So this category of 5, these 5 subcategories were further, weighted using 9 categories, according to the IPCC, using the tier 2, you need to move up to, 9 subcategories. So when we did our survey, we were able then to weight our animal subcategories into those 5. So it could be 5 there, but the data that we are now using for the indigenous breeds, which is 90% of our cattle, is now actually based on 9 subcategories. Next slide. Yeah, the biggest issue is that except for the agro-pastoral, where we did a survey in about 5,000 cattle, out of, for your own information, Zimbabwe's got around 6 million cattle. The other production systems, the data is quite scanty. It could be live weights, it could be the feed baskets or the manure management systems. We don't have a lot of information on this, in literature. And at times it's really challenging because, for example, if you get live weights that are not distinguished by sex, then already it becomes a source of uncertainty in terms of quantifying those emissions. So yes, we are happy with the agro-pastoral so far, which is representing like 90% of our emissions. But for the 3 production systems, there's still quite a lot of work, like Andy said. This is just the beginning. Next slide. So, just to reflect on this New Zealand project, we actually see that our first round of tier 2 inventory, which was based on literature and expert judgment, the emissions were actually 1.5 times more than the tier 1 that we've been relying on, which is what we reported in the BTR1. But now when we moved into the second phase of the project and collected field data, we actually managed to reduce that disparity to about 20% more. So this emphasizes actually the importance of collecting field data to support, literature data when you are computing these tier 2, inventories. Next slide. So just as a trend that we picked, we actually see that if we're now comparing these country-specific emission factors to the IPCC refinements, we actually see that for high productivity dairy systems, the emission factors are lower than the IPCC 2019. Whilst if we look into the low productivity systems, which are mostly agro-pastoral or pastoral systems, and they are also the bigger sector in Africa, we actually see that the emission factors are more. So basically, we are saying for dairy, we are underestimating. Sorry, we're overestimating, but for the low productive systems, we are underestimating. I think you can also check out our latest article where we expand on this. Next slide. Then in this second phase, after we collected survey data, we were quite more confident that we can now use our tier 2 to do some mitigation assessment. And on this table, you can actually see that we did look at 2 interventions from the agro-pastoral system, which is improving feed and health management. And we also looked into how breed improvement in the semi-intensive dairy or the smallholder dairy system could impact, emission reductions. And these actions are mainly informed by our livestock growth plan and our dairy sector development strategy, which actually sets some targets in terms of animal numbers that have to be considered under those actions. And it came at a time when Zimbabwe had already produced its country statement, which included, livestock. And so we were kind of validating now what the country statement had done. And this country statement, in its mitigation assessment, was really a tier 1 approach. So using the parameters of the tier 2, we could actually see that the target that we put in our NDC account statement is shooting for in terms of emission reductions with almost half of the target that we have. So this was very important in the sense that now we can actually go further and try to find means of offsetting that difference, perhaps from the grazing land in terms of mitigation modeling. Otherwise, those targets are based on animal interventions. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. It's really interesting to see how your inventory has been evolving over the time. So thank you for that really lovely journey. Let's move on. Next, we've got Sega, who's going to talk a little bit about West Africa. So yeah, moving to a slightly different part of the continent, but yeah, Sega, over to you.
Thank you, Sine. Can you confirm that you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and we can also see the slides. Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening. My name is Seganda. I'm currently acting as director at the Dara Livestock Research Center, which is one of the livestock research center of the Senegalese Agricultural Research Institute based in Senegal, West Africa. So during the past 10 years, most of my work has been in livestock GHG inventory improvement. That's why it is a pleasure for me, as also an AfCAP livestock core team member, to talk to you about some experiences with a specific focus on listen and learn from collaborative initiative in West and Central Africa through the livestock community of practice. So in August 2003, the AfCAP West and Central Africa Regional Forum took place in Accra, Ghana. This event bringing together around 34 participants from 12 African countries. This meeting provides an important space for delegates to share their experiences on, for example, GHG inventory reporting, identifying common challenge and needs, and discuss strategies for reducing emission from the livestock sector. The forum, additionally, was also an opportunity to explore scientific collaboration for livestock research across the region. Participants underlined the importance of strengthening regional cooperation, sharing knowledge and resources, and developing joint initiatives to improve the quality of livestock GHG inventory. And during the same event, one of the key questions which guides the discussion was how African countries can meet their reporting obligation and climate commitments in underfunding situation. It is a real great question that the participant asked. And during the interaction between the delegates, it can be highlighted the need for innovative on GHG quantification and strong collaboration among research institutes, governments, and other relevant partners in order to ensure the sustainable progress in livestock GHG inventory improvement and climate action. Next slide, please. So in terms of listen learn from this regional forum, we can summarize it into 2 points. First, participants recognize that several mitigation strategies will be promoted in the short term in order to reduce the GHG emission from livestock system. Those include, for example, forage cultivation, feed quality improvement techniques, genetic improvement, and biogas production. During the same event, the option of, for example, reducing the livestock animal population was deeply debated. However, participants agreed that this issue required careful consideration, given the multifunctionality of livestock in the region, including its economic, social, and cultural importance. Second, several research areas were identified as a priority for strengthening livestock GHG inventory in Africa, especially in Western Central Africa. Those domains includes animal feeding, developing tools for rationing, sustainable regional management, and in last point, improving approach for collecting data on livestock farming system. Participants also highlight the need to increase the quality of livestock measurement using more innovative techniques and tools such as applying the green feed system at the regional level. We have many experiences using green feed system, for example, in Benin, in Burkina Faso, through some regional projects, and applying informatics solution for data collection and analysis. As a way forward, participants agree on the importance of fostering collaboration among countries to develop specific emission factors, considering the fact that many of those countries continue to use the IPCC default factors, the Tier 1, and to create regional database, and finally to improve livestock GHG estimate through the adoption of more advanced methods, including applying Tier 2 methodologies. Next, please. Following this regional forum, Mali expressed its interest to visit Senegal in order to share experiences and lessons learned on livestock GHG inventory. With the support of African Climate Action Partnership and New Zealand Climate Smart Agricultural Initiative, this technical exchange visit took place in Senegal in September 2004. During this exchange visit, Malian experts present their strategies for supporting policy makers in line with the country's climate commitment. To achieve this initiative, the experts highlight two key areas of intervention. First, they underline the need to establish research and development program at the national level, which allowed them to better understand the livestock production and to produce relevant technical parameters or factors like live weight, average daily gain, digestibility energy, and so on. Those parameter value can allow them to produce more specific reference in order to target all those challenges. Second, the stress of the system for collection, monitoring, and stock activity data. This one is really important for producing consistent GHG inventory and supporting evidence-based policymaker. NDIF, Mali-Senegal exchange visit, debate during this event, existing decision support tool and meta-analysis, active expert news networks, data collection guidelines for inventory procedures, available database, and the fact to use the previous studies in order to gather existing data within the livestock services and development program, as well as ongoing initiative to implement Tier 2 methodology in the region. Next slide, please. What can we learn from this exchange visit? We know that it is an opportunity to improve livestock GHG inventory. That's why experts identified three key short-term priorities. The first one is to collect, assess, and make available existing data from research institutions, development projects, and ministries level. Indeed, improving access to existing information was recognized as a cost-effective way to strengthen inventory systems and to reduce data gap. The second priority is to promote and use current open access information platforms. For example, using Feedipedia, because we know from previous studies that some parameters like digestibility of the feed is a very sensitive parameter using Chair 2 methodology. The Feedipedia platform provide valuable technical data and resources for livestock and feed-related assessments. The third priority is to prioritize and coordinate research activity across the region, particularly by identifying common data gaps and developing joint research initiatives to address them. This approach is particularly relevant. Indeed, based on, for example, IPCC recommendation, accurate data from neighboring countries with similar production system, environmental condition, and climate characteristic can be used to support inventory development and can improve estimation. Finally, participants agree at the end of this exchange visit to achieve initiative will depend on strong collaboration among stakeholders. That's why I'm fully agree with Andres when we say that it is not for only one person or one organization to deal with this issue to move from Chair 1 to Chair 2. That's why effective partnership, enhanced cooperation, and a clear define of role and task for involved actors are critical to ensure sustainable progress in strengthening livestock GHG inventory across the region. Last one. Thank you. We remain committed to support initiative which encourage knowledge and improve livestock GHG inventory in West and Central Africa. We welcome any opportunities for collaboration, knowledge sharing, and joint research that can contribute to address the diverse challenge and opportunities of livestock system across West and Central Africa. Thank you. Back to you, Sinead.
Yeah, thank you, Sega. It's been really interesting to hear about all of the lessons that you've learned as you've gone through the process. All right, we'd like to introduce our final speaker, Roy. Over to you to finish off our presentations today.
Thank you so much, Sinead, and the organizers for having me speak today. It's a pleasure to be here. I will be complementing what Walter and Sega have presented to share some of the work that we've been doing in East and Southern Africa as well, and also be telling you a bit more about who AfCAP is, since it's been mentioned a lot. I'm glad to see so many familiar names in the participant list, so it's great to see some familiar faces, but also nice to see some new names as well. So yeah, touching on some of the things that Sega presented, he's presented on our key exchange in West and North Africa, as well as our bilateral exchange. the continent, we've held similar exchanges. The intention of these exchanges is really to bring together players from across these regions to identify what their region-specific priorities are, what the lessons they've learned, and the advances they've made, and how they can share that with colleagues, and also to align some key progress and actions across different stakeholders. So we'd convened our own East Africa and also a Southern Africa forum in 2023, similar to the one Sega presented on, to do this. And then we had also co-convened a regional workshop with Southern Africa and East Africa, along with FAO, which that one brought in a bit more players from the NDC side as well. Next slide, please. So that's on the regional level. Then, similar to what happened between Senegal and Mali, we also really see a lot of value in getting countries to engage on bilateral bases to really share how each other has made progress in terms of developing their inventories, work in terms of incorporating livestock ambitions and measures into climate policies, and also sharing on how they are implementing different strategies. So these bilateral exchanges are really valuable opportunities for countries to build good working relationships, to build relationships between similar placed individuals across different countries. So we'd done a country visit as well between Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Kenya, which Walter was also involved in. So a lot of those experiences that Walter shared from Zimbabwe, we shared with Malawi as well, and also brought in some Kenya perspectives. Next slide, please. We also convene a lot of virtual peer sharing where it's not possible to do in-person events. So following up from the in-country exchange that we had with Malawi, there was a need for making sure that capacity building for GHG measurement doesn't just sit within the national levels of government, but flows down to the broader stakeholders in the country. So we hosted a online training for GHG measurement. We also have engaged with the UNFCCC's Regional Coordination Center for East and Southern Africa to convene workshops, and that again really targeting the more environmental NDCs development people. Next slide. So I won't go into all the different lessons and outcomes from this because Sega did a really thorough job of highlighting what's come out from the West Africa side, and in the Southern and East Africa side, it's not widely different, a lot of similarities. But in terms of the shared priorities that we really see is that we know that livestock is a really central part of economies, livelihoods, and culture for a lot of countries. So it's a really key aspect of economies, and there's really a need to prioritize greater policy integration for livestock and climate measures. A key point is that while we talk a lot about GHG and inventories and mitigation options, interventions are often not siloed in terms of mitigation. There's a lot of adaptation co-benefits. So the adaptation and mitigation really needs to be addressed together. A lot of people raised that while we making a lot of improvements for capacities around measuring GHG and developing inventories to set relevant mitigation targets, the same sort of evidence base and data metrics for adaptation are lagging behind. So there's a real need to link up how we measure successful adaptation as well. Another key thing is that there's a real desire for these multi-stakeholder platforms to really enable this regional coordination, to support scaling solutions, to bring people together, to enable opportunities like joint proposal development, technology transfers, etc. As I mentioned with the Malawi case, like capacity building, there's a real need that we know, but this need is not just on the national level. There's a need to decentralize that and get as many stakeholders involved as possible, bringing in the local level, subnational levels, and players from beyond just the government ministries. And then, yeah, it's well-known fact that there's a massive financing gap in climate action in general in Africa, but also particularly for the livestock sector. So there's real need to build capacity in terms of how players within the livestock sector can start accessing climate financing and green financing more. Next slide, please. So yeah, I start off almost back to front describing what we've done, but not who we are. So just briefly, if you're not aware of who we are, the African Climate Action Partnership is a regional platform underneath the Global Climate Action Partnership, which is really a network for peer sharing to foster collaboration and raise ambition around the design and implementation of low emissions development pathways. The main way that we do this is through communities of practice. So we have 4 key communities of practice, one that's on energy access, and then 3 in the agriculture space. One of them obviously being the livestock one, but we also have one on rice and one on soil organic carbon. Next slide, please. So what exactly is the livestock community of practice trying to do? So the first aspect is really around building the capacity for the livestock sector, making sure that we have the capacity, whether it's around inventories, whether it's around policy development, to really design and implement accurate and relevant climate actions to support resilience and reduce emissions within the livestock sector. But then there's also the second part is more about participation. So historically, climate ambitions have been set by often the environmental ministries who develop these NDCs that should be applied across the economy, but there's been little engagement from players within the livestock sector. So we also really want to support more engagement with livestock sector players in these processes, helping to design climate ambitions, but also ensuring that those players are really, from the start, outlined as the key vehicles for implementation of these. And then importantly, as a community of practice, we as AfCAP are the people who hold the space, but that what we do and how we do it is really driven by the network. So we want to develop a demand-driven peer learning platform for sharing and engagement. So really, we look to our community members to tell us what they need, what they can contribute, where there's opportunities, how the community can come together to support them, essentially. Next slide. So yeah, I'll just give you a very brief overview of what exactly we are doing at the moment. So as you might have noticed, a lot of what we present of what we've done is a few years old. So last year we had a slight hiatus because we were initially funded by the US State Department and everything was withdrawn last year. But we are happily now resuming our work under new donors. In this process, like the process of fundraising is still ongoing there. So we have donors to keep us going for the moment, but we are fundraising to to scale up our work. In the immediate future, that's definitely happening. We have an ongoing webinar series, so keep an eye on our social media platforms like LinkedIn to see when we announce those. And also, we are hoping to convene another one of these regional forums, such as the one or the three that have been presented earlier. And this will be across all the regions. It won't be specific on one of the sub-regions of Africa. So on the side of the slide, we have a QR code. This is basically if you're interested in engaging in one of our in-person workshops. We're busy designing that and are really trying to ensure that the focus of the workshop fits the needs of the people who will be there. So if you complete the survey, you both letting us know that you're interested in attending, but also what you need from that workshop. So please, if you do have a moment, it would be great if you could complete that survey. I think my colleague Jamie has also put the link in the chat if you can't scan the QR code. So that's definitely going ahead this year, but we also have future ambitions which are dependent on the success of our fundraising. So something that comes up often is that members are really keen on a repository of best practices and technologies across Africa. So there's interest in developing a knowledge repository to really capture all the different examples of best practice for inventory development and clear guidelines for countries. These bilateral exchanges and direct country supports are things that we're really keen to continue as well, whether that's for inventory setting or more for the policy development implementation side. We're hoping to do more of that. And we're also hoping to do more direct climate finance training. In the next year or so, we'll be trialing this with our RISE community of practice, working with one country to deliver that. And we're hoping that that's a model that can be replicated many times across different communities of practice, but also across different countries. That's my time. Thank you so much, everyone, for your attention.
Great, thank you, Roy. Yeah, you gave some nice examples how working together, you'll always go much farther than working alone. So good to see all of the collaboration. Okay, I think if you can stop sharing, please, and we'll get the panel all together. And thank you to the team. I see you've been answering the questions on the Q&A, so appreciate that. But maybe we'll get into some questions and get with the last 10 minutes that we have. Let's try and answer as many as we can. So we've got a question here. Can there be any possibilities to domesticate the support that New Zealand has been providing through regional platforms like Cardassa or continental platforms like AU IBAR? Andy, I wonder, is that something you can answer, or Roy?
I think all of us could answer from some perspective. Definitely. And as suggested by the question and also by Linda, that's definitely would be desirable. I think compared to where we were 5 years ago at the beginning of this program, there's a lot more resources in the region, human resources and knowledge in the region to pursue that. So definitely. Roy or others from the community of practice point of view?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, that's definitely something we're keen to do. So I'd encourage anyone who's really interested in the direct country support to get in touch with us. Even if we can't respond immediately to the request and direct needs, we can support with the process of matchmaking to potential engines that can really help with that process of domestication.
Thanks, Roy. This is a question I think for all the panel, but many projects end without the excellent recommendations being implemented. They do ask, is it AfCAP take this? Will the initiative be taken forward? Is that mandate, and is funding already committed? I guess there's various different answers to that, but can anybody make a comment on that?
I'm happy to come in quickly.
Mm.
So yeah, AfCAP, we are really like we are not the key engines of generating knowledge. So we really do want to leverage off of progress that's been made. So when there are these projects that are coming to a close and there's clear recommendations, as long as those recommendations are really advocated for and put forward by the in countries as that's also what they need. If our membership says like we have these priorities that have been identified and this is what we want to take forward, it's definitely an area where we want to continue to support because, as I mentioned, we're member-driven network, so it's definitely an area where we would want to take something forward, and we have the flexibility in our mandate to respond to these things. I will just say that we're not an implementation platform, so if like the recommendations are specific to implementing action on the ground, there's maybe an area where we won't be able to take it forward. But if it's continued learning, continued capacity building, policy setting, etc., that's areas where we can help.
Thanks, Roy. I'll put this question to Walter and Sega actually, because you've sort of had a really nice journey. Looking back now, is there anything you would have done, different? And what did you see as the sort of biggest barriers in terms of, you obviously got to a successful ending and we heard all the really positive stuff, but obviously, I'm sure there were some curveballs along the way. Have you got some commentary on that journey? Maybe I'll go to Walter first and then to Sega.
Well, when I look, I think your question is more linked also to the previous one where Roy was answering. I think buy-in is the most important thing from the ministries of agriculture, because before we entered into this process, I thought it's so much difficult. But just going down the drain, I think our national governments, they need to put some resources to make this process a continuous. It's not expensive. I mean, for all those data gaps that we mentioned, these are just surveys. I mean, for national reporting and addressing data gaps, I think we just need more buy-in from our national governments. They need to set aside, I can tell you that 100,000 will do you wonders in this kind of work. So, yeah, I think that's what I would say. And of course, maybe we also have got our own regional development agencies like these CADESAs, the SADC, our regional, administrative bodies. I think they also now need to uh, have more buy-in into this kind of work. It's not what I thought before I engaged into it. It's quite simple and straightforward. Thank you.
Thanks, Walter. Sega?
First, I learned that a good researcher is not a good expert for GHG inventory. There is a difference. And from the lesson learned, conducting some activities, for example, in Ghana, I realized that there is we need a trade-off between the objective of the project and the level in terms of capacity building of the involved institution through the delegates or the focal points. A quick example, there is many information, technical information for the livestock sectors in many countries in West Africa. But there is not any space where we can gather all those information in order to allow the inventory compiler to use directly those information. That's why I'm not agree with totally when we say that there is a scarcity of data. Many data are existing into some countries, but it is mostly the availability of those data. And we need to assess first the availability of the data before to see in which way we have to implement some activities which allows us to improve the GHG inventory using, for example, advanced methodology.
Cool.
That's my comment.
Thank you, Tega. We've sort of reached time, but maybe we'll just get one final comment from each of the panel members. If you can just keep it really, really short. Next top priority in terms of next steps to really leverage on what's been happening. You've obviously mentioned, some of where you think the next steps should be, but you're number one and very quickly, and that should bring our webinar to a close. So in the order of our presentations, we'll go to you, Andy, first.
I guess echoing what Walter said, it would be for the stakeholders in each country to get together, decide what it is they really need to do next, and seek the support for that from domestic or international partners.
Cool. Thanks, Andy. Walter, your top one, very quickly.
Linked to what Sega said, our scientists, they need more awareness so that they collect the data that meets the tier 2 needs.
Cool. Sega, very quickly, top, next step.
Having a starting point, like using initial tier 2.
Yeah. Cool.
Initial.
Thanks, Sega. And Roy, to close us out.
Going off of Sega, not just having a starting point, but having an implementation pathway of how we plan to improve inventories, but also deliver mitigation options.
Okay. Well, with that, look, I would just like to thank all of our 4 presenters for excellent presentations. I'd also like to thank all of the audience for tuning in and also participating by asking the Q&A. We appreciate that. We hope you've enjoyed this webinar. And yeah, please keep an eye on socials for more really informative webinars like this. So big thank you to everyone today, and good boy.
Thank you, Sinead.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks.